We are here live on our preview of Emma Explores preview edition, which we like to do on these nice, quiet Friday afternoons. And I'm always pushing Emma with a new interface to Substack Live. This time I'm using the desktop version, and there are indeed some subtle little goody details that who knew? Never mind about all of that. I'm delighted to have you, Emma, as our guest today. And we have a very special kind of New Year's angle coming up on Emma Explores next week, Thursday, in our Atlantic time window. Go ahead and check your calendar for your local time and the link to register in Zoom. So tell us a little bit about what your vision is for this and where you want to take it.
Well, Barbara, it's Happy New Year to you and everyone else who's listening and watching to us. I can't believe we're in 2026 now. I thought it's a really good opportunity. It's the beginning of the year to have a look back and see what were some of the most popular episodes, what did we talk about, and how people might have used any information that they found there and what interesting discoveries they might have made themselves. So we're going to be doing it in a slightly different. I'm not going to be doing a presentation. It's going to be a talk between a few of us. So we have Linda is definitely coming along, Linda Tether and Jennifer Jones, and possibly a couple of other people. And then we're just going to have a chat and see what we find, really. It's going to be something a little bit interesting. We're going to talk about some of the most popular episodes. So I thought that they're going to include things like full text search. If anybody's been using that on Family Search, absolutely brilliant. Highly recommend it. I did my talk on letters and things like that, and I've actually mentioned that to so many people, and people go, oh, didn't know that existed. So there's all these things that happen, and sometimes they give you a lot of fanfare and say we're making this big change, and other times it just sort of slips out. So you have to be quite well aware of things. So full text search was one of them. Gateway ancestors, if anybody has found any really interesting people. And when I did gateway ancestors, I was talking about into aristocracy or royalty or anything like that. But gateway could mean something else. It could mean into a whole new industry, for example, or has just led you in a different direction. So it'd be really interesting to find out about those. Surnames and unusual names. Everyone remembers my Gilby and my Rosalindas. There were quite a few of those in my tree, and my great aunt Rosa. See if anybody's come up with any individual or very interesting names. I did post when I was doing something where I found somebody who'd got, I think, at least 7 Christian names, and see if anybody's got any interesting people they've discovered in their tree that they'd like to share a little bit more about them. Wills and probate was another area that was quite a lot of interaction on that one. You never know what you're going to discover when you start looking into people's wills and probates. You can discover people liked each other, people didn't trust each other, or someone had definitely fallen out. So any interesting discoveries in those areas. And then we're going to talk a little bit about Roots Tech and what's coming up with that, and an interview I'm going to be doing with somebody from Family Search who's going to be telling us a little bit more about that. Exciting times lying ahead there, and it's just about the right time to get prepared for that. So just a few tips on doing that as well.
And especially with the relatives at Roots Tech window that they open, and the slightly buggy, I'm still playing with it, relative finder tool, which can be a fun way to explore. I'll do a separate post about that in the lead up to Roots Tech. There's a lot of things, as some of you know out there. Hi there. As some of you know, I've done now, this will be the 3rd year running, a Roots Tech ride along for those of us who are not physically on site at Roots Tech, with some insider views to those who are on site at Roots Tech. And that's always a fun way to connect. But I want to cycle back to what you were describing, going back over each of a year's worth of, and I think maybe if we went to the entire catalog of Emma Explores programs, you have the insider track on which are the ones that have gotten the most engagement in terms of overall visibility. And we talk about what we've seen in the live conversations with people who are able to join us in Zoom person. There's many people that have been viewing these online as recordings as well. A key thing to realize is we have direct access to talk to Emma directly. And talk to her about questions that have come up from what we've done in related areas, uh, using using these various tools. You've mentioned Transcribus, I believe. You've talked about using other AI tools, including other AI tools to help you read documents. You've talked about signatures most recently. On each of these are little tidbits of ideas. What I love about your series is you light a match and you say, go, and you give us the road to path and a car and say, quick to follow. So I'm especially excited. So many of you joining today, thank you so much for taking the time this morning, afternoon, wherever you are, to join us. Feel free to drop questions in here about recollections of some of the episodes that come to mind that you'd like to discuss in next week's program. I know since your program, for example, about signatures, that was that just January? Am I No, I mean just December.
December.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
Just
Well,
before Christmas. Not that long ago.
Barb's memory window. Well, there was another series of posts that came out since then, talking about ancestors' signatures and both family trees of them. You talked about tea towels, things, deliverables that you could make as Christmas gifts around signatures to that. I think that as I've always maintained, kind of a key to me for Projectkin has been recognizing that every story, every there are so many forms of stories. And when we talk about, I did this project, I did this little thing, I did this little calendar, I did this little tea towel, it's a project. It tells a story.
Mm.
And turning that gift or giveaway into or deliverable in some form into something that becomes an artifact for future historians, for future family historians, for your legacy, if I can use the big L word, to pass down is is about intentionality and context
And
and
talking about
putting it.
signatures, I was working on my signatures project yesterday, and I'd done my grandfather's side of my dad's father, and I thought, well, and I started looking at some of the signatures. Hang on, those are the other side. They're my dad's mother, and then starting to look through and thinking, well, whose signatures have I got on her side as well? And I've got the two side by side, so I can see what's going on, and there is an overlap because they're related a couple of generations back, where someone's third great grandparents and someone's fourth great grandparents, the same people. It gets a bit complicated. But apart from that, and then starting to look through and just seeing what I found another one that I had for one of my three times great grandmothers there that I didn't know I had. And it's made me go back through my records again and think, where could I find that? Where could I find this person's signature? What information have I got? And a few months ago, somebody contacted me from he was involved in the English church in St. Petersburg in Russia. And he mentioned there was this Zandex, which is basically where somebody has photographed all these registers, so the birth, marriage, and death records over a period in the 19th century and early 20th century, and that they were available. And I thought, I actually went through them. I thought, when he sent them through, there's so much I don't know what I'll do with them. Okay, and then I ended up going through them and actually taking screenshots of all the ones that I thought were relevant that had the family names I was looking for. So Jubb, Handyside, Catley, various ones like that.
We all know them now. Yeah.
and looking through them, and I thought, okay, I'll have another look through those. And then what I was doing was I was looking at weddings and thinking that some of these other weddings, I think, who are the witnesses? Because you get about 6 or 8 different people signing it. Sometimes it's really easy to read. And Sophia Jubb just jumped out at me from one of those, and it's like, okay, that's another little puzzle solved.
Yeah, weddings and really any kind of family, bring everybody together in a formalized kind of way to commemorate an important family event. Maybe baptisms is another one, for example. They're just these magical family moments where, whether it's signatures or photographs, I think about this because in my previous life with a startup, we were doing facial recognition against photographs. So that sort of takes from the 19th century forward, and we can't go back beyond that. And being able to capture people at ceremonial moments like weddings was a terrific way to pull all the people in the family together. And kids have a funny way of only growing in expected stages. So you can usually tell the difference between a 2-year-old and a 7-year-old. But going back prior to the 19th century, signatures are such a brilliant way of getting that pattern recognition of your eye to start to see who these people are. As you say, being able to find Sophia from that collection instantly, and now you carry her forward. And oh, by the way, in terms of creating something that has an emotional bond with the descendants who will follow you, or even the cousins and nephews and nieces around you, creating things that have a little zhuzh, have a little emotional pull that's accessible, easily accessible, without understanding these fancy genealogy words and big and complicated second cousin 3 times removed. Well, let me explain how the removals work. Instead, you're losing them. What you want is to hook them in and pull them in. So
And
there's so
another source
much
I found as
thematic.
well. I was looking at some of the heralds' visitations, so they're back well before the start of our formal records here, and people signed them. So
Wait,
the
wait, wait,
head
wait.
of the
I'm sorry.
family. So,
Translation for a moment, please. Okay, go ahead.
so heralds' visitations are where they went out to a family, and they were part of the College of Arms. And if somebody wanted to actually have a formal pedigree done, it's like they had somebody who came out and investigated and went through all the information, and they put together a family tree. These were then
Thank you.
collated. And actually, I was talking to Elsa Churchill today of the Society of Genealogists, and I'm going to be publishing her in, I think, late February, and we had a really good chat all about pedigrees and things like that there. So look out for that one. But looking at this, I've actually got it on the screen next to me. So I've got Henry Jubb, who was, I think, a brother of Sophia, if I remember rightly, and he signed this. So I've got his name next to it, and on the next down is Martin, which isn't one of my ones, but it's got Robert Martin signed that. So you've actually got the names of these people on there. So that's another little source to have a look for and just see if there's anybody relating to you.
Emma, you're like a British whisperer for us. No, I mean, seriously, we've heard these terms, little bits of these pieces, but never really understood how they all come together. And to recognize that forgive me, but you'll allow my Americanism here, for fancy people who have the consultants translated from the College of Arms come in and be an inspector. It's like an ISO inspector, or ISO, in corporate terms, to come through and inspect all of the documentation related to the blah, blah, blah to get to the seal crest, is a brilliant way to have that kind of formal certification. Once you understand what the steps are that are happening, it's just as I'm explaining that you can use family, ceremonial family events to line everybody up and compare the faces for, for AI purposes. Yeah, that's brilliant, and it's like a oh dear, I'm translating everything into engineering terms today. It's like a workflow um, to sort through and create the output that is a verified family tree. And forgive me for doing it that way, but the flip side is also true. If you fast forward, uh, I don't know, fast forward 50 years from now, or 30 years from now, even an era that might be a little iffy for some of us to be able to reach, but is nothing to our children and grandchildren, for example, just 30 years. Um, the knowledge of the birth, deaths, marriage, baptism dates, and so on of our near term ancestors is going to be as easy as going into a some kind of a parsing AI based system and saying, "Who is my third great grandmother?" Oh, that's right. Find a picture of my third great grandmother. Boom, there it is. Okay, great. You know, thinking about it in those terms, what are what are the things that we know that we can tell, that we can combine and deliver that AI will never know? And I
Another
think that's where
thing,
the exciting stuff lies.
yeah, another thing Elsa mentioned today is that they accept people's family histories. So if you've written yours up, and you've got all the notes, you've got a tree, you've got everything like that, you can actually send it to them. You can ask if they'll accept it, and if they do, then they will keep it in their collection. And they're going through various different projects, and they have opportunities for volunteers to do different things, to actually digitize things. So they've been doing a project to digitize the older pedigrees, which are beautiful. If you ever get a chance to have a look at those on the Society of Genealogists website, have a look at pedigrees on there, because some of them are works of art. They're not just little things of people. They've got so much illustration on them and everything. But the idea that we can actually contribute to something, and we can actually ensure that our knowledge, the research that we've done and everything like that isn't lost. It's another
Oh,
opportunity.
absolutely. Absolutely. And that's a great insight of the difference between the facts and data, which may very well increasingly be accessible into AI systems to report about, and the output that itself is an artifact. As you say, these beautifully penned, illustrated pedigrees for the purposes of, for example, the College of Arms and whatnot. You reference those trees. Is that something that's available to non-members, or does that require a membership?
They've got a few that are available to non-members. You can see some examples on their website, but then you do have to
Hmm.
join. But it's actually worthwhile
But they
joining,
also,
because they've got so
yeah,
much
they have a
information.
global membership now too,
Mm,
right? And
yes, definitely.
they've just done or been in the middle of an expansive update to their website, as I recall, right? Is
And
that
they're
accessible now?
changing it again. They're changing their
Oh,
website again this year, Elsa told me. So that's going to be make it easier for people to search and things like that. So,
oh, good.
and sort of
Oh,
bring things
fabulous.
together. Yeah.
Oh, fabulous. Do you know how far back they go with the pedigrees that are online? Or is
Some of
that
them go
like
back
another
to
whole
the
episode?
16th, 17th century.
So, hello, colonists.
Sorry.
Hello, fellow colonists. All of us out there whose ancestors, yeah, really did come from somewhere around the British Isles. um, being able to go back to some of these kinds of records. So many of us out yonder work so hard to understand why did our ancestors leave? Where did they arrive? What have they done since? And so on. Because frankly, those are easier to reach. But again, the things that I think are so fascinating about the stories that you tell in your own family uh, in Britain are teasers for the rest of us to where we might find the landings of the roots from our shores, if you don't mind my mixing metaphors. And getting back to your point, as our starter for this today is a preview for next week, are those conversations about the thematic view you've taken to your own family, whether it's signatures and industries. I love the way you've taken different industries like publishing and followed your ancestors to go through that. I think that's one where I feel a little guilty because I do have only a great grandfather in the sense that he's quite close. And if anything, my issue is that he's got so much material about him or he wrote that's everywhere, that it's just a big chore. Lazy. Um,
I have
uh,
something where I have somebody further back, and he was a commissioner of bankruptcy. So you can imagine he sat in a local court, and people came up to him, and he had to make a judgment on whether this person should be made bankrupt. And he was one, I think, of about 8 who went around the country and did it. And when you think, okay, well, looking up his information, the amount of information about the court cases that he presided over versus the information that relates to him personally, you have to try and think, well, okay, I'm not interested in those ones. I want these other ones, and sort of try and sort of divide things up.
Yeah. And records for transactions like that can be, I mean, they can be a little difficult to understand for a layperson to understand in today's business, much less another country, much less a few hundred years ago. Are there strategies for going about that with respect to fields like bankruptcy or other kinds of things? You don't even use the same words for attorneys that we do.
Are
And we
lawyers and
don't wear wigs.
solicitors, yes, and barristers. Um, so if you're looking for something like bankruptcies, I believe that there are books about it. Pen and Sword and things do books on people who want to find out more about that. But newspaper archives, that's where a lot of the information is held. So people advertised in a newspaper to say that so and so was bankrupt, or so and so, if there's anybody who has a claim upon so and so's business, have a look in newspaper archives, the British newspaper archives, newspapers.com, things like that. Start there and just see what
Yeah,
you can
at
find.
Trove, you've
Mhm.
talked about in the past, and
Yep.
Elefind is one that is one of my new favorites because it's completely free and it takes you to all kinds of crazy small um, publications and things that come kind of out of nowhere. Kathy Stone has just asked, I think, a very important question that I have an opinion on an answer for. We searched records many years ago and ran into records that had been burned in a file. Are there potentially new sources that would bear searching again?
It depends. I mean, if you're talking about Ireland, as a great example of that, where the centralized records were burned, I understand that some of them have been taken out so that those ones weren't actually on site at the time. So if you're fortunate enough to have those ones, or they were sort of centrally compiled records. So they you would go at the individual parishes if you knew where they were and see if they still had the
Ah,
records for those. And a similar situation is with the parish records and the bishop's transcripts. So for births, marriages, and deaths. So you will have your local parish register where the priest will have written whatever he wanted in there. There might be margin notes, there might be all sorts of things. And then somebody, not necessarily the same person, would have written up a version of that which would have been sent to a centralized location. So if you get a chance to look
mm.
at both, it's always a good idea just to see if there's any differences between them, any extra information.
I think there's also, she's pointing out, her in her case, it's not Ireland, it's County Durham in England. And I think there's two parts to that question. One is, were your target files actually burned after
Mm.
all? And you've given a great answer to two cases where maybe it wasn't actual, or the record itself is still accessible. Um, the second question is about records that may not yet have been digitized when you looked 3 years ago, but are today. Do you have any kind of sense from your conversations with experts about percentage of materials that are available today that weren't available like 3 years ago because they weren't digitized yet or indexed or accessible?
I think when we're talking about digitized records, the percentage that is actually digitized versus what is actually available in a place like an archive, if you've got 10% digitized, you've got a lot. If more than that, it's fantastic. So the majority of it hasn't been digitized. So it's the original records that are available. And an archive could be something like a centralized one, like the National Archives at Kew, slightly smaller one, the Society of Genealogists, or it could be a county one. So if you're talking about a place, it could be something to do with an individual estate. If your ancestors worked on an estate, for example, they might be mentioned in records as having been employed there, or having had access to land, or different things like that. So you never quite know what information is out there until you start looking and asking questions, seeing what you find, asking people with local knowledge. That's what I know. Jude's online here, Jude Rhodes. So if you wanted to know more about Yorkshire, she's an expert in Yorkshire. So you would go to somebody like her because she can tell you how close these places are and where the records would be stored for them, or whether it's worthwhile
Or what
going
they're
to somewhere.
called. Yeah,
Yes.
or what they're called. Jude, I first met a couple of years ago and was a speaker for us on a Projectkin program, as I recall from your introduction. And in fact, in 2 words, I gave her the surname of that same Tuark's great grandfather. And she immediately put us in from Settle to uh, a town where there is a parish church that has in the graveyard. She helped me find the whole list of the graveyard, and sure enough, the Harger family is all over the place. It right there in the town of Giggleswick, which was a huge surprise to me, and I never would have known. There you go. Here is your answer, Kathy. Meet Jude, the remarkable Jude Rhodes. Durham Archives have an extensive list of information guides and a collection of nonconformist records, which are very useful. And here's another example of a term where I'll go ahead and say, ignorant Americans didn't realize I'm looking for Quakers. Well, the Society of Friends, and of course, nonconformists is how it's often referred to. And I, didn't even know where to go for some of these kinds of things. And I think these are the ways in which we, as a community, helping each other out. We're like all sitting in a big library together and say, "Psst."
And another thing to remember is that county boundaries and names and things have changed over the years. So if you're looking in one place, so I've got ancestors who came from what was called Cumberland at the time. That's now known as Cumbria. But the borders of that aren't what they used to be. And so things have changed, things have been added, things have been removed. You'll see a lot of reference to Middlesex in this country. Middlesex doesn't exist anymore, and the majority of that has been incorporated into London. A lot of Surrey records are now part of central London records and everything. So there's always these lots of different places that you can look. So it's finding out the history of the place to start with, I think, and then thinking about where would those records be located.
Right. That's the idea that borders change is as old as what we would call gerrymandering here in America. In the sense that there's lots of reasons, whether political, religious, or ego, that borders will change and move, and records will be stored in different places for different reasons. Local expertise, local knowledge, it's a kind of thing that you can just sort of understand it in an abstract, but when you're looking for that one thing, you're hitting your head against the proverbial brick wall without stopping to think strategically. And that's what I'm so pleased with in the ways in which we're creating community and creating an opportunity. And I think next week's session is in many ways an opportunity to look at all things English. And really, I know your expertise extends, although it certainly extends to Scotland and Ireland, and I wouldn't be surprised Wales as well, to really look at all things from the British Isles and where are you? What do you need to know? Where are you going? How can I help? I mean, it's such an opportunity.
I would
Is it
happily
too broad?
happily
Am I
talk about
promising too much?
England, Scotland, Ireland. I am not an expert on Wales. There are a few people who are, and happy to point people in the right direction if they want more about Welsh records. But no, that's not an area I've ever really got into.
By a vowel. That's all I know. Well, it's been a delight to do this again. Thank you so, so much for your patience with me on these crazy experiments of pushing our new technology tools. And you know, we're going back to Zoom for Thursday, so no stress of strange new worlds. And we will take this one forward and into the new year with some fun new ways to go forward and learn from each other and learn together. And I know that you're always pushing the envelope on new ways to listen to the audience, listen to our community, and new ways to take that not only into our joy of Emma Explores, but also your extraordinary podcast of Journeys into Genealogy. Before we break, did you want to drop anything about upcoming interviews and the archive that you have from last year?
So basically, it's been going for 5 years now. I've got 125 episodes, and I don't know if you know this, but the most popular episode is my interview with you. Did you notice that?
That's amazing. I did not know that.
In my end of year summary, yeah, it's over 1,200 views now. That one,
Wow.
yeah. So there you go.
I'm just gonna look a little better. Stage, screen,
Yeah,
and podcasts.
I've got a lot lined up for this year already. I've already got about 8 interviews scheduled for various different topics. Roots Tech is going to be one of them. So we're going to be doing one in a couple of weeks' time, and then that's going to be published fairly soon thereafter. And that will be perfect timing in terms of getting ready for things like relatives at Roots Tech and making sure you take advantage of everything so you can get as prepared as possible for that. So keep an eye out for that one. And Society of Friends, you mentioned the Quakers. They are one of the people that I do want to interview later on in the year. Haven't approached them yet. But History of Parliament is one that I'm going to be doing. Family Tree Maker, all sorts of different things coming up next year or this year, later on this year. So keep your eyes out.
Fantastic. I mean, I love the way your interviews are never a sales pitch. Hey, I know sales pitch. I've done them. um, and they are all your interview style is always scratching beneath to get a little bit further and dig a little further in. Speaking to your upcoming interview relating to Roots Tech, may I tip that? Is that with Lucy?
It is with
Um,
Lucy. Yeah.
you had such a wonderful, wonderful interview with her last year. I'm really looking forward to that one. And I know that all of us on our little ride along are very eager to get her insights because the rest of us are all, you know, poking at the box to try to understand what's going to happen next. What are we doing? The schedule dropped just yesterday, and I have my episodes lined up of what I want to try to watch and how. But the insight from the inside about why we're doing it that way, and well, from their perspective, why they're doing it that way, and what it's going to be available, and what the best strategies are for getting the most out of it. That's going to be brilliant. And I need to go free text full search. Anyway, I've got some work to do. We all do. Great way to start the day out here in California. Thank you for taking the time at the end of your day. And out there in the great Pacific, we'll see. Actually, it really is that way. We'll see where tomorrow takes us. Again, thank you so much, Emma Cox. And we'll see you next Thursday at Emma Explores in our Atlantic time window. Till then,
Take care. See you then. Bye.
bye. Let's see. There we go. Found it. Bye bye.